The garage was never meant to be opened. Dust hung in the air like a held breath, decades of silence pressing against the walls where the world-famous voice of laughter and conviction had once echoed, then gone quiet. When Rob Reiner's life finally ended, it was not the headlines that unsettled those closest to him, nor the tributes, nor the familiar montage of iconic films that shaped generations. It was what waited in the dark, behind a door everyone thought they understood. Inside that garage lay fragments of a man the public never truly met, objects heavy with memory, rage, regret, and longing. Boxes labeled in shaking handwriting. Old reels never screened. Letters never sent. Evidence of a private war fought far from red carpets and political stages. The discovery reframed everything. The humor, the confidence, the moral certainty. It suggested a deeper question, one far more disturbing than death itself. Who was Rob Reiner when the cameras stopped rolling? And what happens when the stories we tell the world collapse under the weight of the ones we hide from ourselves? Morning light fell across the driveway in thin, apologetic bands, as if the house itself understood the gravity of the moment. The garage door stood closed, ordinary, beige, unremarkable, hiding nothing that could be guessed from the street. Inside the house, voices moved softly, careful not to disturb the dead. Rob Reiner was gone, and with him the noise of public certainty that had followed him for decades. When the door finally lifted, the sound was mechanical and indifferent, a low grind that felt too loud for mourning. Dust rose immediately, suspended in the air like memory refusing to settle. Shelves lined the walls, bending under the weight of boxes without labels, film canisters sealed with aging tape, notebooks swollen with years of revisions. The space smelled of metal, paper, and something older, a faint bitterness of time spent alone. This was not storage. It was sanctuary. Here, away from studios and stages, Reiner had allowed himself to fracture. The narrator moves through the room with omniscient patience, sensing the emotional residue left behind, the way certain objects were touched often, others never again after a single glance. A childhood photograph rests beside a stack of political clippings. A broken camera sits beneath a shelf of awards never displayed. Contradiction lives comfortably here. As hands begin sorting, patterns reveal themselves with unsettling clarity. Pages repeat the same questions in different handwriting, years apart, circling the same wounds. Margins rage against authority, against expectations inherited and imposed. There is fear, too, etched into late-night notes, fear of fading relevance, of becoming a voice no longer heard, a storyteller replaced by silence. The confidence admired on screens feels, in retrospect, like armor worn too long. The garage hums with an emotional pressure that tightens the chest. It suggests a man who carried his doubts like contraband, hidden even from those closest to him. Every box opened reframes the public image, not as false, but incomplete. Success did not resolve the ache. It only buried it deeper, beneath productivity and applause. Nothing here accuses. Nothing explains itself fully. Instead, the room functions like a confession without absolution, revealing fragments while withholding answers. The narrator lingers on the idea that this space was built not to be discovered, but to survive. A place where the performance could end. When the door lowers again, darkness returns with a finality that feels intentional. The dust settles. The questions remain, heavier now. What kind of pain requires a lifetime of silence? And why did it wait until death to speak? It is here that the story truly begins, not with answers, but with unease, with the sense that every great narrative casts a shadow. The garage remains, sealed again, yet alive, holding breath and meaning. Somewhere within those walls, a truth presses outward, patient, unresolved, waiting for time, or courage, to open the door once more. Even in silence, it refuses to rest. And history leans closer, listening. For what comes next will change everything. Forever. Applause was the first language Rob Reiner learned to understand. It filled rooms before he did, echoed down hallways, lingered after dinner conversations ended. As the son of Carl Reiner, laughter was not merely entertainment. It was expectation, inheritance, currency. From an early age, Rob moved through spaces where adults were amused, brilliant, admired, and endlessly distracted. He learned quickly how to be present without being centered, visible without being seen. Home was alive with voices, but intimacy was elusive. Praise came easily, but it often belonged to the room, not to him. The narrator peers into the quiet spaces between moments, the pauses after jokes landed, the way young Rob watched faces more than words, measuring approval, searching for something steadier than applause. Love felt real, yet conditional, filtered through performance and productivity. Childhood became a rehearsal. At school, the weight of his name arrived before he did. Teachers smiled differently. Classmates expected cleverness. Failure felt amplified, success assumed. Rob internalized the belief that he was always being evaluated, even in solitude. Food became comfort, then shield. Humor became defense. Beneath both lived a growing confusion about identity, who he was when he was not entertaining, not impressing, not echoing a legacy larger than his own body. The father-son dynamic shaped everything. Carl Reiner was generous, towering, beloved, and unknowingly distant. Rob admired him deeply, yet bristled under comparison he could never escape. Every achievement felt like an echo, every deviation a quiet rebellion. The narrator traces moments of unspoken tension, missed conversations, shared rooms filled with unshared truths. Rob did not resent his father. He feared disappearing beside him. Creativity emerged as survival. Writing, performing, shaping stories became a way to claim space without confrontation. Yet even as Rob discovered his voice, doubt followed closely behind. Was talent his own, or merely genetic luck? Did people listen because he was good, or because of his last name? These questions gnawed at him, unanswered, festering. Adolescence hardened those uncertainties. Weight struggles drew cruel attention. Self-awareness sharpened into self-criticism. Mirrors became adversaries. The narrator describes long nights where Rob imagined a future defined either by triumph or erasure, with nothing in between. He did not yet understand that both could coexist. As adulthood approached, a quiet resolve formed. Rob would not merely participate in the world he inherited, he would reshape it. He would be louder, clearer, morally certain. The ambition was sincere, but it carried a hidden cost. In trying to outrun the shadow, he learned to ignore the part of himself that longed for rest. The chapter closes on a pivotal realization, subtle but decisive. Standing at the edge of independence, Rob senses that his life will be a negotiation between visibility and solitude, between applause and authenticity. The path forward promises success, but demands silence about the doubts that drive him. As he steps into that future, the shadow follows, patient and unblinking, waiting for the moment when admiration will no longer be enough to keep it at bay. The rise feels effortless from the outside, a smooth ascent carried by talent, timing, and confidence sharpened through years of quiet preparation. Rob Reiner steps into his prime with the certainty of someone who has waited long enough to be heard. Sets hum with purpose. Scripts come alive in his hands. Actors trust him. Audiences respond. One success folds seamlessly into the next, each film reinforcing the idea that he has found not only his voice, but his authority. Applause returns, louder now, more focused. This time it belongs to him. Yet beneath the celebration, something subtle begins to thin. The narrator lingers on moments the cameras never capture. Hotel rooms after premieres, silent car rides home. The way praise fades quickly once doors close. Reiner listens to the echo of his own footsteps, noticing how success fills schedules but not spaces. Meetings grow frequent, conversations efficient, admiration polished and impersonal. The films themselves reveal more than he intends. Stories about connection, loyalty, longing, moral clarity. Characters searching for truth, for belonging, for something solid in a shifting world. Critics call it insight. Audiences call it honesty. Privately, it feels like exposure. Each project drains something from him, leaving less room to confront what remains unresolved. Pressure accumulates invisibly. With each triumph comes expectation, another story that must matter, another statement that must land. Reiner becomes acutely aware of his public role, not just as a filmmaker, but as a voice. Political convictions sharpen. Opinions harden. Certainty becomes a shield. The narrator suggests this is not arrogance, but armor, forged against the fear of becoming irrelevant, replaceable, forgettable. The garage, though not yet central, begins to take shape during this era. Late nights end there. Boxes are stacked deliberately. Journals multiply. Thoughts he cannot say aloud find refuge on paper. Doubt leaks through in fragments. Questions about sincerity, about whether his work still surprises even himself. He listens to old recordings, rewatches finished films alone, searching not for flaws, but for proof that the meaning is still there. Relationships bend under the weight of his intensity. Collaboration thrives, intimacy strains. He is admired, consulted, quoted, but rarely asked how he is. The narrator observes how loneliness can grow even in crowded rooms, how being needed is not the same as being known. Reiner feels responsible for his image, for his message, for maintaining momentum. Stillness becomes dangerous. As the cultural landscape shifts, whispers of change ripple through the industry. New voices emerge. Tastes evolve. Reiner senses it before it is visible, a tightening in the chest when meetings feel slightly less urgent, when praise arrives with qualifiers. The fear he once buried now stirs, insistent. One night, alone in the garage, he writes a single line and leaves it unfinished. The narrator does not reveal the words, only the hesitation that follows. A man at the height of his influence, pausing mid-thought, uncertain whether the next chapter will be ascent or descent. The chapter ends not with failure, but with foreboding. Applause still waits outside. Success still answers his calls. But inside the empty room, Rob Reiner feels the balance shifting. And somewhere in that silence, the first crack appears, quiet, almost invisible, but irreversible. The descent does not announce itself. It arrives quietly, disguised as fatigue, as friction, as the dull ache of conversations that no longer ignite. Projects that once moved effortlessly now stall. Notes from studios grow cautious. The praise remains, but it carries a different temperature, cooler, conditional, threaded with nostalgia. Rob Reiner senses the shift before anyone names it, the way a seasoned sailor feels a storm in the pressure of the air. Criticism sharpens. Not cruel, not catastrophic, just persistent enough to lodge under the skin. Each review feels less like evaluation and more like erasure, as if the present is being weighed against a past that grows heavier by the day. The narrator traces the psychological toll, certainty curdling into defensiveness, conviction tightening into rigidity. Reiner argues louder, not because he believes more, but because doubt has begun to whisper. The garage becomes central now. Night after night, its door closes behind him, sealing off the noise of the world. Inside, the lighting is dim, unforgiving. He reorders boxes that do not need organizing. He revisits drafts already abandoned. The space absorbs his frustration without judgment. Here, he allows himself to linger on failures, real and imagined, cataloging them as if understanding might soften their impact. Isolation deepens. Relationships strain under the weight of his preoccupation, his urgency, his refusal to slow. Friends sense the distance, but do not know how to cross it. Reiner is present in body, absent in spirit, already arguing with ghosts of relevance and decline. The narrator describes a man circling the same questions late into the night. Was the work ever enough? Was the voice ever truly his? Or was it only borrowed time? Fear becomes more specific. Not fear of death, but of diminishing, of becoming an artifact, discussed in retrospectives rather than rooms where decisions are made. He watches the industry celebrate new voices with a complicated mix of pride and resentment. He believes in progress, yet mourns the loss of center stage. The contradiction exhausts him. In moments of rare stillness, guilt surfaces. Letters are written and never sent. Apologies rehearsed and abandoned. He recognizes the cost of his single-mindedness, the missed dinners, the shortened patience, the way love was sometimes treated as an interruption. These realizations do not bring relief, they bring weight. The narrator lingers on a pivotal night. Rain taps the roof of the garage, steady and insistent. Reiner sits alone, surrounded by the evidence of a life built on meaning, staring at an object he has avoided for years. His breathing slows. The noise inside him recedes. For the first time, he considers the possibility that the fight itself, against fading, against change, may be the source of his suffering. The thought is terrifying. and liberating. He does not decide anything. Not yet. He simply allows the idea to exist, unchallenged, in the quiet. Outside, the world continues, indifferent. Inside, something loosens, just enough to suggest another way forward or a final surrender. The chapter closes on ambiguity. The long night has not ended. But dawn, however distant, has entered his imagination. And with it, a question that will define what remains. Will he release the struggle that shaped him, or cling to it until it consumes what little light is left?